I have a habit I have never broken. When I find something in mathematics I cannot yet prove with certainty, I write it in a private notebook and lock it away in a drawer. I have done this since I was a boy. I have waited on great theorems for 30 years before showing them to anyone. My friends call it caution. I think of it as something else. There is one truth I never wrote down at all. Not in any notebook. Not in any drawer. Not on any page that anyone has ever seen. In May of 1823, a doctor in Bremen sent me 3 pages by courier. By the time the candle on my desk had burned an inch, I saw the universe was not eternal. 100 years before Edwin Hubble would prove it, the proof was in my hands. I told no one. My name is Carl Friedrich Gauss. I have been called the Prince of Mathematics. In 60 years there was nothing in numbers or in the heavens I could not face. On a quiet evening in May of 1823, in 3 pages from an old friend, was the one truth I could not face. I have spent the rest of my life trying to understand why I did not write it down. Let me tell you who Olbers was. I want you to understand him before I tell you what he sent me, because the proof of the universe's beginning did not come from a great university. It did not come from a chair of physics in Berlin or Paris. It came from a doctor in a port city who looked at the stars after his patients had gone to sleep. Olbers was 64 years old in 1823. He lived in Bremen, in a narrow house above his medical practice. He had no university position. He had no laboratory. He had a small dome on his roof and a refracting telescope, and after his last patient left, he climbed up there in winter coats and counted stars. 22 years before he sent me his letter, on the freezing last night of 1801, he had taken a calculation I had sent him and pointed his telescope at a particular patch of sky. The calculation was 3 weeks old. It told him exactly where to look, and he recovered Ceres, the first asteroid ever discovered, which had been lost in the glare of the sun for nearly a year. Olbers found it on the first clear night. The next year, he discovered Pallas on his own. 5 years after that, he found Vesta, 2 new worlds in a sky that other men had searched, found by a doctor in a port city with a small dome on his roof, working from candlelight after midnight. I want you to understand what this means. Olbers was not a famous man. He had no academic title. He was paid by his patients, not by any government. He was 64 years old when he sent me the 3 pages, and he had spent 40 of those years carrying telescopes up to a dome on his roof in the cold. He was, by my measure, one of the great astronomers alive. He had simply done it quietly. He was the kind of man I understood. Cautious, careful, patient. The kind of man who writes nothing he cannot defend. We were the same kind of man in our different cities. And on the 7th of May, 1823, he sent me a letter that contained one question, a question he had been thinking about for 40 winters in his dome. He titled it, On the Transparency of Space. The question was simple. Anyone with a pencil could ask it, and once you have heard it, you cannot stop thinking about it. If the universe is infinite and contains an infinite number of stars scattered uniformly through space, then look up tonight at any patch of black sky between the stars. Point your finger at it. In a perfectly straight line from your finger, sooner or later, your eye must end on the surface of a star, maybe 10,000 light years away, maybe 10 million. But a star, always a star, eventually a star. If that is true, the night sky should not be dark. It should burn. A wall of suns in every direction you turn your head, as bright as the surface of our own sun. By day, by night, in summer and winter, forever. But it does not burn. You have seen this every night of your life. Olbers had seen it for 40 winters from his roof in Bremen.
and he could not bear it any longer. So he gave the question an answer. He said the space between the stars must be filled with some kind of fine matter, a thin, absorbing dust. The light of distant stars must be soaked up before it ever reached us. That, he said, was why the sky is dark. He sent me his 3 pages and asked me what I thought. If anyone told me today that an old doctor had handed me proof of the universe's beginning in 3 pages, I would tell them they were exaggerating. I was there. I would have agreed with them. I read the pages once, and I thought I was reading a clever paper from a cautious friend. I trimmed the candle. I read them again. And on the second reading, I saw what Olbers had not allowed himself to see. His own answer would not survive. Dust between the stars cannot save the dark sky, because dust, when it absorbs starlight long enough, must heat. And anything that absorbs heat must, in time, give that heat back. The dust would glow. The dust would shine. The dust between the stars would, in the end, become as bright as the stars themselves. And the sky would still burn. His paradox was real. His solution was not, which meant something else. Something he had not asked. One of the original assumptions had to be false. Either the universe was not infinite, or it was not full of stars, or it was not eternal. One of these 3 had to give. I sat with that. The candle burned down. I did not move to replace it. I sat in the dark for an hour. The night was clear. The sky outside my window was the wrong color, and I now knew why. The universe had a wall behind it. A wall in time. A moment before which there had been no stars yet. A moment before which there had been nothing yet. The light reaching my window that night was not a small piece of an infinite, eternal blaze. It was light that had been traveling for a finite number of years, from a finite collection of suns that had been switched on at a particular moment in the past. The universe had a beginning. The mathematics demanded it. I saw it as clearly as I have ever seen anything in 60 years of mathematics. As clearly as the 17-sided polygon I had drawn at 18. As clearly as the orbit of Ceres that Olbers had used to find his asteroid in 1801, 100 years before Edwin Hubble would prove it on a mountain in California. The proof was on my desk in Göttingen, in 3 pages from an old friend in Bremen. I never wrote a word. You will want to know why. You will want me to tell you I was afraid that a German Lutheran of 46 years did not lightly write down a proof that the heavens had a beginning. Such a thing was uncomfortably close to the first sentence of a book I had been raised to revere. You will want me to tell you I was uncertain, that the calculation rested on assumptions I could not yet test. Nobody knew how far the stars truly were. My old correspondent Bessel would not measure the first stellar parallax until 1838, 15 years later. These things are partly true. But the deeper answer is older than May of 1823. By the time Olbers' 3 pages reached my desk, I had buried my first wife. I had buried an infant son. I had spent 30 years writing only what I could prove. I had locked theorems in drawers for decades, waiting until the proofs were complete. I had a habit, as I told you. The cosmos, this time, was a fist I could not close. And I had buried enough things in my life to know what it costs to write down a truth you cannot defend. So I let my friend Olbers publish his 3 pages with his wrong answer, and I said nothing. He died in 1840. I died 15 years later. And the truth I had seen in May of 1823 sat behind my eyes for 32 years and went into the ground with me. The world had to wait for a boxer from Missouri. His name was Edwin Hubble. He was born 34 years after I died. He had been a lawyer for a season. He had been a soldier in the Great War. And in 1919, he went to a mountain in California called Mount Wilson, and he pointed a 100-inch telescope at the sky.
For 10 years, he measured the brightness of stars and distant nebulae, with a quiet assistant named Milton Humason at his side. And in January of 1929, he did what I had not dared to do. He had radial velocities for 46 galaxies, but reliable distances for only 24. He plotted those 24 distances against their speeds. He drew a straight line. The line said the universe was expanding, every galaxy retreating from every other galaxy, every distance growing. Run that line backward far enough, and every one of those galaxies meets at a single point, a moment before time, a beginning. Albert Einstein, who had insisted for years that the universe must be static, was forced to undo his own work. The man who had bent space and time had been wrong about the simplest thing of all. The universe had a beginning. 100 years after Olbers' 3 pages reached my desk in Göttingen. You have been told, perhaps, that the great discoveries of science are the work of single great men. They are not. They are the work of 3 pages that arrive on a quiet evening in May. They are the work of friendships that last 22 years. They are the work of a doctor in Bremen with a small dome on his roof who could not sleep because the night sky was the wrong color, and a mathematician in Göttingen who saw the answer in his hand and lacked the courage to write it down. I have spent my life surrounded by men who held truths they could not write down. Olbers had his. I had mine. Hubble, on his mountain a century later, would have his own. There are notebooks in drawers in every great house in Europe with proofs in them that no one will ever see. The candle on my desk in May of 1823 burned out long ago. The 3 pages from Olbers are in a library somewhere, gathering dust. The night sky outside my old window in Göttingen still burns in the equations and is dark in the world. And now you know why. I am Carl Friedrich Gauss, the prince of mathematicians. The most important truth I ever held, I held in another man's letter on a quiet evening in May of 1823. I never wrote it down.